The Louis Diaz podcast.
With Lucy Barnard. Welcome back.
It's so good to be here in real life.
I know the first thing you did was hug me, and I was like, this is too surreal.
Especially because I jumped you and got here first.
You were cheeky. You're the first guest that's ever done that. And you were sneaky about it too, because here I am rolling down the hill with my very loud trolley, right, because of these cobblestones. And you're kind of just lurking in the bunker here. Did you plan this?
No, I was trying to get a YouTube. Or like just a little clip. And then I thought, oh, it'd be so good if I could send it to you and be like, haha, I'm here. Because where we were planning to meet was on the other side of the block. And then I thought, oh, I'm going to sleuth around and see if I can find your little hobble.
Yeah, I wasn't planning to meet you there. I was planning to meet you here.
Well, just as well I got here.
Yeah, so it was meant to be. It's meant to be, but in classic form, we started talking and you've started telling me stuff, and I've erased everything that you've said out of my memory. I'm a very bad multitasker as well.
Me too. You know what you should do though is that we should try and see if we can put a pin here on Google Maps that says Louis Diaz podcast.
Awesome.
Wouldn't it be? And then people could give you ratings here
Just
at the
remember,
location.
you got to talk into the mic.
Here at the location.
Because I know you're
This is going to be terrible because normally we record over the phone and I walk around and do things while I'm talking to you. Nothing that's going to distract me, but just keeps my energy moving because I, as you're probably seeing, I am like a bit of
You're high energy. You are high energy.
I have not been for a run this morning. I'm basically Wombat after 2 days of not going anywhere.
As if you run.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
I used to, but today I feel like I could go for one.
Well, I should introduce the audience as well. Welcome, Lucy Barnard. Welcome back again to the Louis Diaz podcast. We are here in Hosier Lane. For anyone that's not familiar with Hosier Lane, we're recording in Melbourne CBD.
You'll be able to find it on Google. Yeah.
Which is really a weird place for people to find you, right? In Melbourne City, in, an art laneway.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense at all.
Does to
Shouldn't
me.
you be walking somewhere?
Oh, me? I thought we were talking about you.
Yeah, we're talking about you.
Well, it's funny that you say that because so many people have bumped into me over the last weeks that I've been home. And just like, because I have this persona on Instagram, people really feel like they know me because I do talk colloquially when I'm traveling. And so I just get random hugs and then apologies like, oh, sorry. I know I don't know you, but I feel like I do. And so while I've been doing this film tour, I'm on tour, which has been insane. Basically, at the end of the night, I line up for an hour and just take hug after hug, which is so nice because when you've been
You're on a hug tour.
isolated for so long, it's nice to feel connected with
isolated?
people. Oh, yes.
You can't tell.
I know. It's like I've been let out of the asylum. I'm just running around chasing after people for hugs.
I love your energy. I was a bit concerned. I was like, obviously she's doing this massive tour. She's doing this massive walk. Is this putting her out at all? Like, would she have energy for this?
Didn't I come to you?
Boy, was I wrong.
Yeah.
No. Well, I think I instigated it.
Oh, nice. Well,
I was like, is she going to be in Melbourne? Better tee that up.
Let's see each other in real life.
IRL.
And it's crazy too because I don't know if you know this about me, but I have a condition called prosopagnosia.
I don't know that, no.
Okay, so that surprises me because you, of all people that I've done casts with, you're very well researched.
Yeah, but there was stuff that you had on your website that you said you didn't want to talk about.
That's one thing, but the other thing is on my YouTube channel, so it is open.
Okay.
Anyway, it's not a big deal.
I've been busted. Caught out. Caught out for not researching.
So Dr. Carl, everyone's favourite Australian
Triple J.
scientist.
Triple J. Hi, Dr. Carl.
Yeah. He also shares prosopagnosia, and we were on an article about it together many years ago. So prosopagnosia is commonly known as face blindness, which means that when you identify someone, you don't use their face to identify them because you just cannot remember, like the facial areas in your brain, there's 3, don't work like everyone else. So I will look at you, but I can't remember. I know where your eye, I know what an eye is, I know what a nose is, but I never remember where they are or how big they are or anything. So basically, it's not that I'm looking at a blank canvas. it's just, I don't care. I'm not going to remember that. It's not important to me. So when I recognize people, it's the way they walk, it's their hair, it's all of that sort of thing. So I can remember people from a long time ago because of their stature, and just like there's just so much more to it, especially micro expressions. I'm very good at picking out lies because I'm more sensitive to those tiny movements.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So tell me, how did you know that was me just then walking down here?
You're the way, I don't know that you want to know, but you bob.
I bob.
You've got a bob.
Da-dum, da-dum, da-dum. Yeah, it's called a
You do.
swag. It's called
It's
swag.
swagger. You got a swag.
Yeah, please call it swag. I've already been made to feel self-conscious when you took a photo of my very limp wrist over my camera before.
Oh my goodness. I love that the one thing, I took a really cool shot with the camera aligned with your eye. I thought it was very artistic, and the one thing you see is like, body floor.
That's what we see. That's
I know, it's
Isn't that
crazy.
how
It's
we're
just
trained?
it's a wrist. Like,
But that's how we're
who
trained.
gives a shit? I know.
Are you like that at all? Do you like?
Yeah, I
Because
go
we were
through-
talking about that. Like
Yeah.
someone's going to take a bad picture of you and post they're going to take 10 pictures
Happens all the time.
and they're going to post the bad one.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
so do you ever feel self-conscious like that?
So I can't fight it. Like the reason I can do what I do is because I have a very slow metabolism. And what that means, we were discussing this last night, it means that I can put on weight very quickly and then I can lose it very slowly. So I'm a endurance machine.
Awesome.
It also means that of the 3 deserts that I've hiked through, I don't need to carry as much water as a normal person or
crazy.
a person within the normal spectrum would have to carry because my metabolism is so slow. I assume that because I eat fresh food wherever I can, the water that is retained in that food is retained in me for longer because it's getting a slower release. So,
That is
I
a
mean,
fun fact.
but the downside of that, of course, in social settings is that I have 2 sets of wardrobes. I have Lucy has time to be fit wardrobe, and then Lucy blows out wardrobe, purely because while I'm doing stuff like this, the weight just stacks on and goes into storage. And I don't care because it means that when I'm freezing my ass off in minus 40 degrees, I have backup, and I lose that weight. I lose the initial weight very quickly in the first weeks because my body is freaking out as it adjusts. But then it also means that I can walk for days without too much food and I'm okay.
Wow. I have bad news for you. I brought you some pastries.
Oh my God. We'll be remembering those in the snow.
This is an almond and chocolate croissant.
Nice.
Does it sound good?
Yeah, that sounds
Otherwise,
amazing.
I've got a fruit escargot.
Are we going to be like,
We're gonna be chowing down.
oh my God, I'm
On
sorry
camera.
to all of the people who are about to watch
Witness
this.
this.
Oh.
Here you go.
Self-conscious about body? No. Self-conscious about eating?
Well,
A little.
I mean, you know what? You know what's funny about what you just said is that I was kind of looking through some things last night and just refreshing my memory because I can't do as much research as I did the first time we spoke because
yeah,
I have
bet. You're busy.
I have intense production goals, which generally means when I'm here on a Saturday, I'm doing 2 a day, which, yes, I have one after this as well, which is crazy. And I'm editing, like I'm doing the full production cycle. It's crazy. It's nuts. But I was watching through some of your stuff. Please open and eat. Oh, wow. Did you just do that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so
Isn't it
cheeky.
great?
You are so cheeky.
Also, I do want a bite of yours.
Oh, why don't we do halves?
Okay.
Why don't you chow down half of that and then we'll do a swap?
Okay, but
Okay, well, how about have a bite? All right, come on.
I'm going to have to tear it in half because I'll forget.
Yeah, that's a good one. And so I was watching through some of your stuff and, you're just smiling. You smile so much. I put a little note down in my notepad that said, this woman has a perpetual smile. It just never ceases to be there.
Yeah.
And of course, that's not true because I know you go through challenges as well. And you've posted some of those challenges and I saw you pretty stressed out with the van and all of that, where that lovely older couple helped you out as well.
Oh, wow.
What are their names again?
Bronco Ingrid.
Oh, yeah. Special people.
Very.
And and I thought, I put a little note there that said, if God was to choose one person to do this walk, of course, it makes sense that it was Lucy, because only someone with that kind of smile that can smile through so much could do this. And then now you've given me an extra fun fact to confirm that with this whole, well, I also have a rare metabolism that means that I store water through deserts. I'm like, of course God made you to do this war.
Let me tell you 2 things that supports your theory because I feel like you'll love it. Switch.
You know what? I can't be bothered tearing this in half.
I'll do it. Right. Okay. So first of all, have you heard of epigenetics?
Yes, I have, but I don't know what it is.
It's the idea, or it's a science where we believe that you can inherit traits and personality from your ancestors, right? So my great-grandfather, his job was to walk on foot from Papua New Guinea to Sydney, naming moth species.
Wow.
Yeah. And then the second thing is just my name, which is in full Lucy Louise Frances Barnard. Lucy Louise Frances, when it's moved from Latin into English, means warrior and messenger of light.
Wow. That's beautiful. That is a beautiful name. Lucy Louise Frances, warrior and messenger of light, and scoffer of croissants in laneways.
I know, I'm trying not to chew in the microphone.
It's cool. I'll do something snazzy with that in the background.
Nice.
It's going to be a whole ASMR podcast for the fans.
It would kill me if I was listening and hearing someone chew. I'd be like, oh.
You know, that's so special. And yeah, you know, I think about, even though I didn't know what it was called by name, I think about epigenetics all the time. I refer to my daughter a lot. It's really weird. I've got some fascinating stories on how I think her and I are like basically like twins, but in separate bodies. And she's grown up most of her life without me physically there because she lives in Queensland, right? So, you know, it's not like I was there every day for her to pick up these traits.
Yep.
But I got this funny story about one time. Her mum sends me a text message. She would have been about 3 years old. Her mum sends me a text message with a picture of this nudie, cloudy apple juice and says in the caption, "Your daughter is obsessed with this juice." Lo and behold, in the other hand, I was holding that exact juice.
That's awesome. Did you send her a photo back?
I did. And like even last year, now she's 16. She sent me a cute selfie at Grilled. Guess where I was?
At Grilled.
At Grilled.
That's so awesome.
I was like, you and I are the same, you know that? You were the same. We were on the phone the other day and she was talking about impulse. I was like, have a look what I just wrote on my whiteboard. Impulse. Epigenetics.
Right.
It's a thing.
That's so interesting too, because they have done twin studies. That's one of the favorite ways of studying traits and interesting science anomalies. The further that twins grow away from each other, so if they're apart as children, the more similar they are, the more likely they are to wear the same clothes and have personality very similarly. Yeah, and
That's
if they
wild.
grow up together, then because a big part of our identity is not, we know who we are by who we're not. So twins who grow up together tend to be very different in personality.
That's so fascinating. I want to take this down so many threads. And I guess we should also tell because some people are going to watch this that don't know who you are. And you recently were announced by, was it Nat Geo?
Australian Geographic Society.
Australian Geographic Society. Thank you.
It's a big one, but it's an arm of Australian Geographic who take care of adventure grants and supporting adventurers and scientific projects to be able to go out into the field.
And what did they bestow you with?
They named me Australian Adventurer of the Year.
Anyone? That's a big honour.
It is a huge honour. Yeah. Yep. I hope you're going to do something with sound in post for that. Like the crowd goes wild.
Yeah, we'll play some crowd sound. I'll put some crowd in.
I feel like we need to do an intro of who I am, what I'm doing.
We should.
And then I can explain that when we had that introduction moment at the Brisbane show, the crowd did go wild. And I have to say it's probably because it was also partly a Barnard reunion because my cousins were all there.
Awesome.
But that was a really great event.
But yeah, I mean, I'm not the kind of podcaster that sort of starts reeling off, you know, people's accolades and highlights and things like that. I feel like it can be a bit of a cold way to start a conversation. I like to get right into it and let people introduce themselves because ultimately you know you better than me. Doesn't matter how much I research you. I'm going to miss something or mess something up.
I don't know, Louis. Like some of the times that we've had conversations, I'm like, whoa, he has researched.
I really appreciate that. It's a huge compliment. I think that's why people have liked my guests have enjoyed being on the podcast in the past is because
you make an effort.
I do. Yeah, and they do too. You know, like we got to reciprocate the effort. If you're going to come here and give me 2 hours of your time, You did that expertly. You're used to sharing with someone, aren't you?
Yeah, Wombat.
Mhm. All right, well, why don't you do your intro then?
Okay, so my name is Lucy Barnard. I'm making an attempt to walk the length of the earth. And when I complete it, I'll be the first woman to have accomplished that feat. I am 20,000 kilometres in, 21 pairs of shoes in, and I hike with an Australian cattle dog, and his name is Wombat.
That's awesome. Why did I get so hung up on the shoes? I figured you would have gone through so many more shoes.
People love the shoes. I think the biggest issue with shoes is that I can't get them. So normally you'd replace shoes every 700 kilometres, but I replace mine almost every 1,000. And it all comes down to the generosity of people who've been following all this time since the beginning. If they come and travel, they will write to me and say, what do you need? Can we bring you anything? And often people have carted whole luggage bags over for me at every event that we've had. So I'm doing a film tour around Australia at the moment. My big goal is to have a production company at the end of.
Oh, by the way, you're going to have food on your face throughout this whole
No.
recording.
And that is actually like, I'm the worst. Everyone always tells me, you've got food on your face. And thank you for telling me.
It's cool. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, so my big goal at the end of this journey is that I'll be an ethnographic filmmaker. So I'm really working hard to start up a production company. I don't want to go down that typical avenue where adventurers write books. I know there's a hunger for it, but I feel like my story doesn't end at the end of the walk. So maybe later in life I can do a better job, especially because a lot of what I do is traumatic and enraging. So I don't want to be rage writing a book. I would rather be able to come at it from a distant place.
Traumatic and enraging?
Sometimes we'll get to it.
Okay. Here I just gave you a huge compliment on your eternal smile.
Well, that's the thing. I'm really very fortunate that I have a high baseline for happiness, but I do work on it. I keep a gratitude journal. I was very awkward socially through high school, and I think that not really fitting in the best way meant that I had to learn how to stand on my own 2 feet when it comes to managing happiness. So I'm very fortunate. I'm sure we'll talk about Bailey Seema along our morning. She's someone that's walked the length of Australia. She came and supported me this year to help me get through a very difficult section. Difficult because it's cartel managed and because it was through a desert that had a heat wave that was the hottest ever recorded.
Whoa.
So it was a really hard year. She is basically doing everything that I do in Australia, so different challenges, and doing it all while managing bipolar disorder. And it's severe. And for her to do that, the reason she ended up coming over is because I sent her a message at the end of the year congratulating her for her feat. And I made a cheeky comment like, I'm looking forward to you coming and supporting me the way you've had support. Like just a little dig, because we get stupid comments online all the time about, oh, you've got support. Well, that changes things. You know, that kind of ridiculous shit that you get from random people. Anyway, we really just got each other. And when we first were talking, I said to her, I don't know how you do it. Like, I don't know how you do everything that I'm doing. You manage all of that. And occasionally you have to check yourself into hospital because you need to manage an illness. It's incredible. And if you want to meet someone who is a light bearer, Bailey is the happiest, most magnetic person I've ever met. And I always want to be right next to her. She's amazing.
That's a huge compliment to give someone. Hey, Bailey, if you're listening, if you've got past our ASMR chewing and you're still here listening, hello. Nice to meet you. Yeah, that's so wild, you know, that you've thrown that in there. It's like a spanner in the works for people because, you know, if you look at your socials and, you know, you look at the fact that you're just doing all this, you would think that personally there wouldn't be a lot of challenges to overcome. You know, someone has to be really fighting fit at the top of their game to be able to just do something like this. But you're trying to manage yourself and Bailey are trying to manage, you know, personal challenges as well.
Yeah, I would tell you that the fitness is the easiest part because once you've got it, you've got it. You don't need to maintain it. The only thing that you really need to worry about is avoiding injury and addressing niggles early on so that they don't derail you. But, you know, as a single female traveling through Latin countries, every day I'm asked very personal questions. As soon as you meet someone, what's your name? How old are you? Are you married? Do you have kids? Where are you going? Where are you staying? That's strange. Aren't you scared? And of course, I'm giving vague answers because, yes, I don't want you knowing where I'm camping tonight. I need to know that when I'm sleeping, I'm safe. And so that is by far, you know, talking to the police, asking them if I'm in an area that's secure, if I need to reroute and then being very mindful of the cars that pass, and if I'm near a road and checking to make sure that they're not repeating on me. Stuff like that. The walk is it is a strain, but it's just not even important when I'm managing everything else.
So interesting. So this is your second time on the podcast, obviously, and then
No, it's the third.
there's no way this is the third. Please, I'm good at counting.
I know.
We've spoken on
Not
the phone.
today.
We have spoken on the phone.
I'm sure. I am sure.
No, this is definitely your second. Episode 22, Beautiful Stories with Lucy
Really?
Barnard. Please.
Let me Google it. 1 sec.
You got to fact check me on my own podcast?
Can you
Hey,
imagine
let's
if
do
I'm
this.
right? Now I'm like, oh, maybe I really am. I'm sure.
You're outside. No, it's your second time. You know what? I'll do you a favor and cut this bit out. Just so we don't make a fool of you.
You don't have to. It's fine. I mean, I do a lot of podcasts, but I'm sure.
What are you going to do? You're going to go back through my
Oh,
discography?
God, he's right.
He's-
I thought I was like,
there's few things I love more in life than being right.
I thought I was more important to you.
You are, but you're hard to catch.
I am.
And you know what? I didn't want to be greedy with your time as well. I was like, Louis, you've had your go. You've had your go at Lucy. I even felt guilty for asking you to do this one. I felt bad.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. But I feel like we have we've established like a friendship, and it happened because of the podcast.
I think that's probably why I feel like I've been on more often than not. I've certainly been instrumental in more than my podcast.
You have.
I feel like I've sent many people your way.
Oh yeah, I owe you. You need some production credits on this bad boy. Cam Williams, special guest. He was on twice.
Really?
Yeah, he was because he came through Melbourne on his ride.
He doesn't live here though, does he?
No, he lives in Perth.
Bummer.
So Cam came back from Ushuaia, landed in Sydney, and then rode via Melbourne back to Perth. And I caught him in that short time he was here.
And you would have recorded Michael Atkinson.
I did. Outback Mike.
Mm-hmm. And you've got a special
Bloody
guest coming up. Probably you haven't released that yet.
Do I? Oh, well, no. Cam and I haven't spoken on the podcast. Did I just give it away? Yeah. No, Cam and I have spoken on the phone, but not on the podcast.
Have you asked?
I haven't.
You should just straight shoot that. I asked already for you.
Well, you know what? I'm doing them in person now.
So you wouldn't have talked to me if I hadn't come to Melbourne.
That's not necessarily true because I make special exceptions for people. And, like Hamaima, someone that's been on the podcast 3 times, Hector Marcel in New York, she's in Germany, he's in New York. They add a lot of value to me from the stories that they tell and the things that they talk about. And I feel like they add a lot of value to my audience as well, and their audiences too. They get a kick out of chatting to me. We have this really great chemistry, and, I will have to continue to do the odd video, one here or there. But, this thing kind of forces me to make sure I catch people when they're here. And so this is, how much more special is this?
It's really nice,
we just
actually.
shared pastries.
And it's very branded. Like, it's visually extra for the show as well, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, it's nice. I mean, you're lucky it's quiet. I mean, I guess we're not lucky, but this laneway can fill up and we can have all kinds of people coming up saying hi, taking photos. It might turn out to be like that in a little bit. But yeah, I don't know where I was talking. This is your second time on the podcast. That's where I started. And the first time we spoke, I believe you were in Costa Rica. Please tell me you were in Costa Rica.
I don't think I'm a reliable source of information.
Yeah, that's true. We just proved that, didn't we? I think you were in Costa Rica, which is beneath Mexico for those who are not versed in their geography. So since then, you've gone through Mexico, and on your Instagram, this is verified that your current spot is Wyoming.
Correct.
So that's where you've sort of taken off from. You come back to Australia. People will be wondering, if you're doing this walk up the length of the earth, why are you taking this break? Like, why are you here in Melbourne?
Okay. Well, that's easy. In 2020, I was forced to stop because of the pandemic. I had to come home, which meant that I'd already organised, because you need to look ahead when you do a journey like this. So I'd already organised my visa for the United States. And I was issued 5 years, which was an accident. I was meant to be issued 10, and I never fixed it in Ecuador because I just couldn't face the drama of it. And I thought I was pretty confident that within 5 years I'd have been finished, and I would have been, except that then I was forced on a 2-year break. So that means that now in January, right now on the 19th, so tomorrow, my visa was going to expire and I'd need to have left the States. So just yesterday, the new visa was approved and my passport is on its way back home. And that's why I'm here. So I will be returning shortly.
Okay, because I was like thinking to myself, extended Christmas break to see the fam.
Which is also an added bonus. I think one of the things that was really hard,
The Barnards were waiting for you in Brisbane.
they were. It was awesome. No, I think like the difficult thing is that when you do a world first, people are very picky and judgy and they want to catch you out for doing things that you shouldn't do to say, well, you're not really the first person. And that's something that the pandemic really gifted me because it meant that I was allowed to leave the trail, you know, in the space of my head. Of course, I'm not saying that I'm the one that's doing it the fastest. That can be for the next person easily. And then it just, so now I don't feel like if I want to step out and go and check something out, I can. So it was a really liberating moment for me. And I just don't feel like I have to explain myself now when somebody, like for example, I'm already alluding to the dangers that I face being a female on trail alone in Latin America. And we did a huge fundraiser this year to help bring a van into Mexico and have Bailey be able to come and sit through some of the difficult sections with me. And then further in an area that was less safe, I had a person who speaks Spanish, who is male, be with me. And that was all very strategic. And so when the van arrived and we're there and we are fighting some of the biggest challenges I have seen yet, and we were not safe and we were having a really hard time. A cartel member, the leader of one of the big groups, had just been executed. So we were trying to navigate our way through and stay alive and feel comfortable and walk 50 kilometers a day through a heat wave, right? And then someone gets on Instagram and is like, oh, you have a support crew. Well, that changes things.
The old keyboard warriors strike again.
Right? Yeah. Fortunately, I have a really awesome crew behind me in terms of an audience. Yeah. And so I just wrote back, which turns out to be one of the best responses that you can just write on the internet when someone's being a dick. Mm-hmm. I just wrote back, why?
That's brilliant, isn't it?
And then they're like...
Then they have to explain themselves.
That's what he wrote. He's like, I didn't think I'd need to explain. I didn't think, what? And then he had to like write it all out. And then everyone else is like, you're an idiot.
Yeah. When you have to explain yourself, you almost put yourself into knots.
Yeah. And to him, he thought it was very basic. It's like, well, you're meant to be hiking alone and now you're not. So it's much easier. So you're not really going to be the first woman to walk the length. You know, it's not as big of a deal. And we're like, mate, my dog is sleeping on top of a grenade launcher. You tell me it's not a big deal. Like, come here and walk it yourself. It doesn't, like, yeah, it changes things. I'm not about to die. Like, I might not die.
Yeah, you touch on a few interesting points there. And I had a question in mind. I don't want to change the subject to that question just yet because I want to continue on this thread. Okay. I wanted to ask you a little bit about community. And, you know, there's three aspects of community. There's your community of the people that you meet over there, like Branko and... Ingrid, there we go. And so I want to touch on that a little bit. Then there's obviously the people that are here that are supporting you as well. And you have a big community. I think you do Patreon as well. You've got a Patreon. And so there's that. And then there's, you know, like the downside of the community. And I guess we don't need to... like the others, the third tier, the people that are watching from the outside and just being
really small. They're almost insignificant. In fact, for me, I think it's crazy. Like, it's amazing that I don't get heckled as much as other people do. And I think a big part of that is the people that are following just want to be uplifted. Yeah.
You've got a good, strong community.
I do.
Like, you have a great community.
I'm really lucky.
Shout out to Lucy's community. Keep going, guys. You rule. But then, yeah, you've got a support team back here as well.
I do give the illusion that I have a support team here. Look, I've got family.
I'm picturing people in like a Jason Bourne-esque kind of like computer setting, you know.
That'd be amazing. I think it's really easy for me to just say, oh, the team take care of that when people want an explanation. And I don't have time because I'm doing it myself and I just need to focus on what I'm doing in the moment. Mm-hmm. And so I think the team that you're thinking about is that I have a safety protocol. And if I press my emergency button, that's when they're activated. So they are there to find out what's going on, what I need.
Is that Mac Mike in that team? I feel like he should be.
Well, actually, he was originally, but it's just I'm setting this beacon off every day, and it sends a message to the people on my team that I'm starting and stopping, so that if anything ever happens, like it's just data collecting. And so it's a lot to ask somebody to receive those messages every morning and every night. And then if I forget, then they have to worry. And of course, over a long period of time, people become very complacent and they're just used to it. And it's really more about saying, I haven't heard from her in a week. This is the last time we got the beacon sent. This is where the beacon's at. We need to raise alarm. So that's what that's about. But more or less, that's just something that's in the background with family. And I have a company who helped me design we just had a conversation about all the risks and issues that might come up and then how I'd mitigate them. So there's that as well. But more or less, that's just something that would happen if I ever set the beacon off. And then, well, I mean, mainly it's really hard for people in Australia to help me do something that's overseas. And it's really hard to gather intel about the safety of an area that you're in without being there, because the best intel is just asking locals and police. So no, I really don't have a support team per se, but that's not to say that my family aren't very helpful. Also, I think the people that have been really instrumental is Paddy Palin, because this is phenomenal to me, but they will provide me with any equipment that I need for free. They're paying for me to do this tour so that I can meet all of the people that have been following for a long time.
That's what we're doing tonight, yeah? I'm coming to that.
Yeah, you're going.
Woo.
And they help with, if I don't have time and I'm very exhausted, I can just write really short messages and be blunt, and they're okay with that. And they will do the research for me. They give me a list of 3 things that they think will solve a problem and the pros and cons of each. And they'll say, we think you'll lean towards this one because it's the lightest option, but you might want to consider this other thing because it serves 2 purposes, or something along those lines. So they have been really awesome, but for the most part, I'm the one that wears the consequences if something isn't done properly. So typically I control everything because I'm the one who dies if everything goes to shit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we should remind people that you've gotten through the tricky Mexico bit.
Yeah.
And now you're in Wyoming in the
Yeah.
United States. So you've been through the United States for quite some time. And I was looking at Wyoming on the map and I was thinking, that's quite central.
It is.
Almost.
Mm-hmm.
Wondering why you're not taking the West Coast.
Along the Pacific Crest. Yeah, so
not that I'm an expert in these things.
Yeah, it's a geography issue. The way that I was walking, I could have gone up the Baja Peninsula, but that would have meant catching a boat or kayaking. And so my rules for this is that I have to walk every step unless there's a water crossing. But if I don't have to do that water crossing, I don't do it. So for that sense, I'm truly walking the length of the earth.
Okay.
I did start on an island. Ushuaia, which is the southernmost town in Argentina, is on an archipelago. So I had to kayak 250 kilometers through some islands to get to the mainland, and then I continued.
Right.
And so I've lost my train of thought.
Well, we were talking about Wyoming and why you're there.
Yes. And so coming through Mexico, thank you, that meant that I wasn't going to divert down to the Baja Peninsula. Also, it's safe to cycle down there, but it's not safe to walk. You know, walking and cycling is really different. We can talk about another incident that happened recently on Instagram if you like. But I'm far more exposed because people typically know when I'm coming into town that I am coming before I get there, because people come past me, they ask what I'm doing, if I need help, and then there's a lot of chatter. And so there's this red zone that I would have had to have crossed to get down there, and I wasn't willing to do that. And I didn't want to walk up the coast because there's highways. It's not as beautiful. And also, I feel like the Pacific Crest Trail now is really populated, and I didn't want to have to be recycling my story every day to every single person. And sometimes I don't tell people at all what I'm doing. I'm just like, oh, I'm just hiking the Colorado Trail, like whatever, because it can get very repetitive, the cycling through. And one person finds out, and then everyone does, especially when you're so identifiable, because I'm one of few hikers that are walking with their dog. Yeah,
so you'd have like this whole Forrest Gump thing happening where he starts running on his own, he ends up running with about 100 people behind him.
I don't think people want to follow, and I'm a salmon, like most people that I've seen. Yeah, so I feel like it's more popular for people to walk from the top, so from the northern points of these trails to south. Whereas I'm going south to north.
Oh, okay.
So
That's what you mean by south.
Yeah, so I'm passing everyone. And so you can imagine even just saying, "Oh, hi, how you going? What's your trail name?" Like that's the kind of conversation that goes on. I'm like, "Oh, I'm just Lucy, just going for a hike. Where are you from? Australia?" That kind of conversation gets really, especially when there's a lot of people on trail. There was one section where I had so many people coming out that it took me 2 hours to walk 3 kilometers because people had just finished a really hard section and they wanted to tell me how awful it was. And I was just like, you're negging me out. Like every single person is like, oh, it's so awful. Wait till you go through. You can't put your foot down. Rah, rah, rah. And they were just really miserable. And I like got very fatigued of being like, oh, it's so beautiful down here. You're going to love, like trying to cheer them up. And it just, in the end, I was like, I'm not going to get to where I need to get to tonight because everyone stopped me. Like I had ages and I was climbing up a hill. So in the end, I just dive bombed off the mountain and then elected to go along a highway just because I needed a mental break from that cloud.
Okay, wow. That's funny. I feel like I'm getting all the dirt on the actual what happens behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's interesting. There are things that have really surprised me. I never really thought that would happen. I'm big time extroverted. I love being re-energized by people and seeing them. But I don't think, like, of course, like if you're on trail and you've got no one to talk to and you see a fresh face, you do want to offload on them. And I don't mind that at all. Like I actually carry a penultimate breakfast in my pack, which is like a very fancy second last meal that just makes me feel really excited on that second last day because that's the hardest day really when you know the next day is when you get into town. And so if I ever meet someone that's having a hard time, I'm like, hey, I've got a really cool breakfast in here. Do you want to share it in the morning? And then it just gets us both set up. And then usually we go our separate ways and, you know, life is good.
Nice.
Yeah, but I was very surprised with just how like, oh, another person's telling me that I'm about to walk into doom and gloom. It just, yeah, it was too much.
Okay, so you're trying to avoid too much people traffic, I guess.
Yeah, or, I mean, that was really unique. I feel like that must have just been a hard section. I don't know, because I didn't do it.
Yeah.
But I'm also managing my mental health. Like,
Yeah.
if I'm noticing that, like, everyone in the room is against me, I'm gonna leave. So that's what I did that day. But generally, when I've met people on trail, it's been a really awesome experience. Actually, I met someone in the middle of nowhere who I got along with really well. And then towards the end, it turned out that he is the director of one of the biggest camp at Burning Man and has offered to give me some tickets so I can go.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Special.
Right?
Yeah.
So good. So
You
there's
and Wombat, two
yeah,
tickets.
Yeah, well, he would probably be expecting that Wombat would be there, but Wombat was being
Imagine
retrained.
Wombat at Burning Man.
Oh man, he would go wild. And actually, we've had goggles. They're called doggles for him before in
Nice.
deserts to protect his eyes. And I feel like that
He would
would
look so cool.
be very Mad Maxy in a very Mad
Yeah.
Maxy environment.
I love it. You know, I think you touched on something there. You talked about mental health, that you're managing your mental health. And that brings me to your t-shirts, your t-shirt range that I saw, the Persistence range.
Oh yeah, yep.
I love it. Great name.
So I released that after COVID, I think. And it was just, I was heading back.
After COVID. Okay, I thought this was a new t-shirt range.
No, the new t-shirt range is different again. That's a picture of Wombat and it says, "You call that a walk."
Aha. Okay. You call that a walk? You got to say it with the voice. It's got to have the tone. You call that a walk?
Well, I took it off Crocodile Dundee. You know, you call that a
Yeah,
knife.
yeah, yeah.
But I don't know. I haven't seen that film in so long. I don't know how to do the drawl.
Same.
I'm trying to
That's
see if
not a-
I can
that's
find a
not a
sticker
walk.
for you, but I don't think I've got anything in here that I can show you. So I'll show you a picture on my phone. And then
Yeah, please do. Because it was funny. Like I was looking at the website. I saw the t-shirts there. I saw the word persistence. And then you touched on a little bit earlier that because of the visa thing, you never expected that you'd be doing this longer than 5 years.
yeah,
And I did kind of want to ask you about that.
it really has hijacked my life, this
You
walk.
call that a walk? You want to show the camera? You call that a walk? Oh, that's cute as.
And it's really nice on a shirt as well.
Yeah, that's nice. Are you selling those tonight?
Yeah.
I might bags myself one.
If you come in really early, we can put it on a shirt for you.
Let's do it. You know, I was thinking, I was sort of honing in on that word persistence. You know, just going back to that. And we're talking about how you planned a 5-year visa, and lo and behold, you know, everything took longer because of COVID. When you originally set out to do this, what was your idea? I know, because I know, like, even with something simple like a podcast, we never really know how much work we're signing up to do when we start certain ventures. And yeah, I guess you brought it up with the whole visa thing. I was like, aha, so this is taking longer. But what was your actual idea at the time? Do you remember it? Like, have you sketched? Okay. I love this look that you give me. I'm going to have to split screen this so that so everyone while I'm talking can see you nodding like, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure you get asked this a lot, but.
No, well, it's more that people are always saying to me, do you still think that you're going to make it in that time frame? So I used to joke, when I started, I really, truly, honestly thought that it would take 3 years to walk the length of the earth. And it is possible, but it means that you can't have anything go wrong and you can't have extended breaks. And I've had a lot of things go wrong throughout the entire course of the journey, and that's fine. Like, I've come to peace with that. And it's actually been a really fulfilling journey. So in some ways, I don't really want it to end.
Mm-hmm.
That's not to say that I'm going to go any further once I get to Alaska. And so I was in South Chile. How long do you think it's going to take? Oh, another 3 years. And then I got to Santiago in Chile. How long do you think I think another 3 years. And so for about 2 or 3 years, every time someone asked me that was always just my stock standard answer. And it never got smaller. Then now I'm at the point where if nothing goes wrong, I know I can get it done in a year and a half. But I also know that things will go wrong.
Yeah. So you're not naive anymore about the reality of this adventure.
Yeah, I think on the very first day, things went wrong.
Is naive a fair word?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I was really not. Yeah, because it's a world that I was never in. So that's fine. And the first day I had to reroute from the plans that I had. And I learned immediately, okay, this journey is not going to be about controlling unnecessary factors. I do everything that I can to stay safe and to have an idea of where I'm going to be. And of course, I'm planning all the time how much food I need when I get into town. I've got to make sure that Wombat's okay. I have to make sure that his vet checks are done and that he's got all of his medications administered. And I've got to try and tell all the stories and la 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 la. There's a lot going on. And I think learning to let go of the things that you think are the most important to control and the easiest to control, once you let that go, for me, I've been very liberated to just be able to enjoy the moment, connect with people and make a decision for myself consciously if that's where I want to be spending my time.
I love that. And so just sort of going back, you think another year and a half, but you started in 2017, right? This is a question as much as like a statement. And so what are we, 2025?
Yep.
So this will be year 8.
Mm-hmm.
Was it?
I don't count it as year 8 though. I'm like, well, there was 2 years of that was the pandemic. So I'm going into year 6.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And it is, something else that's cool about not being so stitched into the time is that often I have made the decision to walk an extra 1,000 kilometers, not kidding, because I knew it would be more beautiful. So I could have gone through.
That's a Lucy thing to do.
Yeah, well, I could have walked down a highway through Ecuador and gotten through in a month and a half. But instead I spent the full 90 days in Ecuador and I went down a trail that's a horse trail that hardly anyone does per a year because it's not something that you can really achieve. You can do it on a bike. It's on a bike packing website. But it also meant that I was going into these amazing indigenous communities and really meeting the real Ecuadorians. Mm-hmm. And I will always have those experiences with me. There were monkeys jumping from tree to tree in a very remote area. I got to see very old, like 500-year-old aqueducts that were built out of wood or stone. Just things that you don't get to see if you're a regular tourist. And so for me, of course I'm going to go that way. Why wouldn't I? And it's more fun for Wombat, which means that we're both having a better time.
Yeah, that's special. That's great. That takes me to the point is when you and I were emailing recently, I noticed something that I hadn't noticed before. And you're going to think this is really bad.
I'm like, uh-oh.
In your email signature, it says ethnographic writer.
So I updated that recently. So sharp eyes on you. Yeah, so
I thought it was going to be like, how did you not notice that 2 years ago when we first got in touch?
Yeah, it used to say expedition lead because when I responded to people in industry, I wanted them to take me seriously. And then I realized, well, actually, and this is one of those things that people hate hearing about, but in this industry, women are really have less acclaim in what we do, because it just doesn't seem, you know, like, for example, I have a friend who made a huge world record achievement last year or the year before, and her partner was with her the entire time behind the scenes doing her social media, and he did a fantastic job. But he was very careful never to put him in the social media, because we've observed that when a man in our industry is being supported by his partner, the reaction is generally, well, of course, how could he do that without support? But when a woman is supported in our industry, it's like, oh, she's not really doing it. And it's something that we really need to keep pushing on and having more, like, I feel like I need to try my best to take the podium as much as possible and take my space on stage, because it just seems like what we do is secondary.
Yep. But that's only to the haters.
It's like 80, it's a lot. For like, I'm not kidding you, I've had that reaction and been really disappointed with myself. Like, I can't believe, and it's just, I feel like it's a cultural, yeah. Like, I've
Is it an Aussie thing, or is it an Aussie? Is it a tall poppy thing? We talk about tall poppy a bit on this podcast with the
No.
comedians, and especially
It's gender. And this is the thing that really surprised me, because when I explain it to my fellow colleagues who are women, and I'm like, do not let people know that you have that you have your partner supporting you. We have all observed ourselves at some point being like, oh yeah, oh yes, and somehow we allow ourselves to feel like a woman's achievement is diminished if there's somebody there supporting her. And in acknowledging that, we're able to talk about it comfortably and come to a point where we can grow beyond it. And that is the work that we're in. We're in the trenches. We're being comfortable, having these chats with other people. Hopefully other people hear this and they can go, yeah, that resonates with me, actually. I feel that way. And then we can just take tabs on those observations and slowly build a new way forward in our community.
Yeah, that's a tall order.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot.
Changing behavior is a tall order.
Let me tell you something that's the most jarring experience I've had on this expedition.
Can we talk about good stuff too? Yes,
we will. We'll do this one thing.
I want to hear everything. No, but please tell me.
So I was in Panama and I just was having a week off because I was exhausted, and I decided to go into a cooking class, and I met this lady in this cooking class.
That would have been awesome.
It was really great. It was just like the vibrancy of the food was brilliant, and I hadn't been eating good food.
I think I remember that on your socials. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, I had a great time. So this lady that I was paired up with asked me what I was doing, and I point blank said, this is what I'm doing, I want to be the first woman to walk the length of the earth. And she just looked deadpan at me with love, but also anger. And she goes, I could never do that. And I was like, you're right. I felt so ashamed of myself because she's a black woman. And there's no way she could do that without a full support team and security, because she would be targeted.
Yeah, right.
And it made me realize that I have so much more work to do, because it's one thing for me in my position to be able to do this. And it has taken 40 years for a woman to be able to mirror the achievement of the first man that did it. But then I realized that there are other women in this world who are not able to move freely, who cannot go on an expedition, who would never be able to raise the funds. And this woman is a lawyer, a top lawyer in New York City.
Wow.
And she still can't. She just doesn't have, we don't have an equal footing.
Yeah.
So it's reminded me that even though it's really uncomfortable to talk about the gender gap, it's very important, because I'm not advocating for people born of privilege. And yes, there is plenty of research to show that there is a gap. I'm advocating for the women that still need to come from behind me. And just because there's a few examples of women doing well in our society doesn't mean that Aboriginal women or immigrant women are doing well. They're not.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And, I'm glad you're passionate about that. I think it is a lot. It's a lot to burden yourself with, but I think you can only do what you're doing as well. Continue being you, continue doing what you're doing, and people will notice.
Yeah.
Because I find that even though it's true, it's an interesting reaction. One of the things that I loved about our first chat was when you said, particularly the men are like, wow, that's so awesome that you do that as well. And so, yeah, you would see a lot. I think one of the most impactful things you can do is set an example. Yeah.
But I know now that I'm rising to a new platform. It's a new era. And I see people advocating for things, and I think, whoa, that's so brave of them, because I actually feel like when I mention stuff like this, I have to apologize first. And I shouldn't have to, like if I'm talking about gender variations, if I'm talking about things that we really know is the truth, like 93% of women before they reach the age of graduating from university are going to be sexually assaulted in some way. Yet 3% of rapists get a conviction. How is that happening? How in 2025 would I feel like going to the police isn't my best option?
Yeah, that's scary. 2025, we make it sound like we're in the future, but at some point in the future, we're going to look back on this moment and think, wow, they were so primitive back then in 2025.
We're really good at burying our heads on this topic, and it's not helpful. Doesn't help. Whereas I talk to my male friends about like the struggles that I'm facing, they get so angry for me and so supportive. And because it's like I'm not at them, like I know that it's not, it's a collective issue.
Yeah.
No one feels targeted. No one feels like they have to say, oh, like my least favorite sentence is not all men, because no one has to say to someone who knows someone that's been murdered that not all men are murderers, but most murderers are men, It's a journey that I think we've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah. I think, I'm glad you brought this up, even though I wasn't ready for it. I'm glad you brought all this up, because it's a part of your walk. And I asked you, we started this thread with the question about what is an ethnographic writer. I think I didn't get to ask you that.
Yeah, I feel like I've actually just thrown you into experiencing what it is to do ethnographic studies, because it's where you live with someone and you move through a community of people and you learn how you do everything. You immerse yourself, you do everything that they do, and you learn their way of life so that you can best represent them on paper or in film.
So is it like, it's almost like documenting?
Yeah, it's, it's usually there's a language gap.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's also different languages, but also subcultures have their own languages.
Yeah,
so it's all about translation. And if I walk into a remote Indigenous community in the middle of the Amazon, I can't speak their language. So the first thing I need to do is learn how to do that. But also in a way, and I've done this in the film, if I translate the Spanish exactly the way that it's meant to be, it's going to make people who are talking look less affluent than they are, or look less authoritative, because the English is so simple when you do that. And so I have to really sit and spend a lot of time being like, okay, if I was of this education level, how would I have conveyed that so that people who are watching really understand that this person is a power figure? Yeah. And a group of us, 4 of us, sat there and we fought for hours, and there is maybe 8 sentences in Spanish in the film.
Wow. Yeah, so going back, ethnographic writer is someone who, just spell it out for me again.
They're trying to do their very best to represent a community in their own words.
Right. Because I remember our first chat, you were on a bus going through, was it Chile? Somewhere. And you were thinking, I could walk faster than this.
Yeah.
And this is how all this started.
Yep.
But then you tie in, obviously your passion, and I guess it's your career as well.
It is. And aren't I lucky that the walk has gifted me the possibility of being able to grow into that role? Like it's not just that I want to be going and hiking. So I really, really want to be going and hiking into remote communities and explaining. So in the film production company that I'm growing, we want to be able to explain, basically I want to be the David Attenborough of people. So I want to be able to explain, this is where I'm in Colombia, in the north, alongside one of the world's only tropical glaciers, where a group of Indigenous people believe that their responsibility on this planet is to protect the soul of the earth. They have invited me to visit them, and it's going to take me 1 week to hike up to the top of their mountain to reach them. And this is a real community that I have been invited to share the story.
I'm already captivated.
Right?
The way you even said that.
So then I want to be able to transform people, like take them on the journey of hiking to high altitude, because it's above 5,000 meters, which means that the pressure of oxygen is dramatically dropped and your oxygen carrying capabilities are not able to do that while it's very difficult to hike at altitude. So there's that part of the journey, and then it's meeting the people. And then what I want to be doing, the quintessential part of these films, will be going on a journey with these people to the moment where they feel the most amount of fulfillment and happiness. and capturing that moment. And I want to have this channel on YouTube so that when you come to watch something on my channel, you know that you're going to leave feeling fulfilled, feeling joy, and knowing that you've been introduced to a group of people that you really respect. You would love to do what they do, but also be able to step back and say, but that's not me.
That's so fascinating to me. You know, I feel like it's such a beautiful thing to desire, you know, to connect people
Yeah,
to complete strangers and to completely strange, I guess, cultures. Do you find that there's a big hunger for that kind of content?
trigger warning. So one of the greatest hurdles to getting the production company off the ground is that there's no evidence that people are hungry for this content, because there is none of this content out there. There is some,
Therefore, they
but
can't be hungry for it.
exactly. It's like one of those products that they try and put into people's hands. Like, it was very difficult for people in the early days to sell portable batteries that you can recharge your phone with, because it was the item that no one knew they needed. And so I feel like there's a Instagram page that I love following called That Good News Girl. And every time I see a story from her, I'm very uplifted, and every day she does it. And now she started really small, but these days she's got nearly 2 million followers, because there is a hunger for this kind of content in the world.
And so she does ethnographic.
Oh no, she just mainly does stories about how a dog found its way home, like really cute, sweet. She just recently did one about a vet in the fires in LA who has opened her clinics to receive pets that people can't have in hotels. And it's like every time I watch them, I almost want to cry, because the
that's
generosity and the things that this lady capture are just so beautiful. And I think it's just such a gift to be able to pass that on to somebody else.
I like that. You know, I'm sitting here and I'm wondering, you know, yes, I asked the question, do you think there's a hunger for that kind of content? But do you think there's parts of cultures or humanity that, you know, won't be as inviting?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
and you want to tell those stories too? I mean, you talked about part of it, you know, part of what your experience is.
Yeah, I think
that chauvinism in the West.
I'm really lucky in that I'm very sensitive to like other people's needs and how to introduce myself to people. So for me, it's not uncommon that people will reveal something to me that they haven't revealed to others. And I'm very grateful for that. I'm very careful what I do with that.
I feel like I need to reveal something to you now.
I've set you up. But then when I've relied on other people to help me get into other communities, sometimes it's fallen apart because I haven't been heard. Like, for example, there was a Colombian man who said that he would help me get into a community that I was going to walk through to reach the Darien Gap. And I said, do you have permission from the Indigenous community? Because I need to have that before I can go there.
We talked about this last time.
And he absolutely, yes, don't worry about it, tranquilo. Yeah, we did, didn't we?
We did.
And then I got there.
Tranquilo.
And I got all the way across like this canal to be able to walk through this area, and 2 kilometers down the road I was kicked out of the community because we didn't have permission. And I turned to this man and I said, have you got the permission? And he just had this dumbstruck look on his face. And I have to tell you, that look is like a little motif of my journey, because often people try and help and they don't listen to what I need or listen to my experience.
Yeah.
And so then it really just unraveled that whole section, and I had to reroute entirely so that I could go in through a different access point, through a different community. And that left me, that was my only option. So that was a big hinge point, because if I couldn't go through Amila, I would have had to have done a lot of work to get forgiveness. And this man, he was like, I'll just sign a note that says that you weren't allowed to walk through so that you can continue on your world record. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I don't feel like a note from my dad saying Lucy was sick that day is going to do it, you know?
Yeah. Oh, you took me back to that first conversation where we talked about tranquilo, what tranquilo means.
And it's like when you're really frustrated with someone and someone just looks at you and goes, just relax, Louis.
Chill. It's chill here.
Chill.
Yeah. Chill out. I wonder what the new Gen Zs say. They must have some weird saying for it.
Damn, I loved Gen Zs.
Yeah, I had some kids walk past here the other day and go, that's cap. I had to ask my daughter what cap is. What's cap? She was like, that means it's really cool.
Nice.
Yeah, it's cap. They'll have a tranquilo.
What is the origin of cap?
Oh, who knows? I think you'll be covering that surely in your documentary.
Probably, because that's the other thing. I'm not just chasing Indigenous groups. I'm really interested in subcultures. And so to be able to get myself welcomed into these little communities and really convey that I believe that what they're doing is amazing, and I really just am there to know more and represent them from their perspective is very exciting to me.
Yeah, that's cool. That's going to be a great journey. But that's a little while off, right?
Yeah, well, actually, I've got 2 grants to make films. So the first one that's screening tonight has come from setting up this goal, which was, again, supported by Paddy Palin. They haven't asked me. They asked for nothing in return, but I love them so much. I'm like, Paddy Palin, Paddy Palin, Paddy Palin.
That's
and then
clipped.
So, and then I've got another one that I'll be doing later in Wyoming, and it's about climate change. So I've signed on to be a participant of a science research with the University of Wyoming. There is no climate data in alpine areas, and it's one of the most important areas to capture information and collect data from, because it's the places that will see the most drastic and quick, evolving changes, so that we can see whether what is being implemented is working or not. And so the idea is that I'm one of the first. There's 2 others who are going out hiking in alpine areas and collecting data with weather stations that are attached to our hiking poles. And if this works, it'll be rolled out worldwide. So hikers all over the world will be able to rapidly collect data and continue, so that we can see variations and see what's happening and respond quickly. I'm very excited to be involved with that.
Awesome. So that's happening. That's happening now. So you've received these grants. You're able to make these.
I have the weather station with me on the tour, so people can check it out.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say, I've got it with me here.
No, I don't. I left it at Paddy Palin's.
If you need a weather station, this is the place where you need a weather station, Melbourne.
Well, these are amazing. They're hyper ultralight, so you can, it's not really big.
What is a weather station?
You'll have to check it out tonight. It basically looks like a plastic box that you put on in a place where there's no thermal heat. So I can't wear it because my body heat would interfere.
Right.
And so a hiking pole is the best place to have it. Right. Or I was going to make a little tripod so that it could sit above Wombat. But he loves running through things, so I feel like it'd be lost pretty quickly if I did that.
Wombat. Yes. Sorry to change the subject.
Let's do it.
You know, I was going through your Instagram before and I saw this picture of Wombat. I think in the caption you were talking about how he's been so good managing through, very challenging hot days.
Mm-hmm.
And he had this face. It looked tired. He looked worn out. And, in my mind, I was imagining thinking, why me? Just thinking about how a dog is born as part of a litter and how that litter then, within a month or 2 gets dispersed out into the world, and these dogs will never see each other again, and some will go and live here and with other families, and it's fascinating, even when you get 2 dogs from one litter that sort of go to families and friends, and they get to maintain some kind of relationship.
Mm-hmm. And they live drastically different lives. Yeah.
Wombat, he didn't know he was signing up for this, Lucy.
He did not know, but I tell you what, he might look exhausted at night, but in the morning, he's a devil. He needs running. So one of the best things about coming to the Melbourne show is that Dr. Farley is there.
Who's Dr. Farley?
Dr. Farley is Wombat's vet. She's amazing. I can call her anytime I want. She is based here in Melbourne.
His vet?
Yeah. Yep.
Cool.
Yep. And
a vet would need to be with you.
No, we do online. We've been doing online consults before it was a thing. And she will liaise with other vets. So because I'm changing vets all the time, so they will have a phone call. I'll bring her into the room with me on my phone, and she has his full history. And it's a really nice way of being able to manage him and his health over a long period of time when there's no consistent relationship with the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And she was talking about last night, someone asked about nutrition and what does Wombat eat, and surely it was quite a judgy question. It's like, surely you need to think, he needs to rest sometimes and you need to think of him. And we were like, okay, this is a really great question because it used to come up a lot, and it is nice to be able to explain to people that Wombat is a blue heeler, a dog that is in a working environment on a farm, mustering, will run 70 kilometers a day. Wombat does 40. So, but Farley and I didn't really have that in perspective when we first started. And I said, look, I'm a bit worried about his nutrition. I want to make sure that he is getting the best health that he can so that I can sustain him over the time. And she like really clutched onto that. And she's like, you're totally right. She reached out to some researchers who are nutrition veterinarian researchers who really work with hyper super endurance dogs. And so Nick, Dr. Nick, he's like, okay, tell me his weight, tell me the distance he's doing, tell me everything. What is he eating? What's the fat content? What's the protein? And I'm like, oh, well, we walk 30 to 40 kilometers every day. And he's like, that's not an endurance dog. That's a dog outdoors enjoying nature. So Wombat is not even close to having his needs exceeded. He is literally just doing what his breed should do daily, which if anyone is considering getting a blue heeler, hear that and know that you're going to have trouble with the dog that you get if you're in an urban environment and you cannot run a marathon with them every day.
Wow. That, I've just learned something because I was sitting there. That question for me came from that place where like, I bet all Wombat's brothers and sisters have got to chill.
Oh, yeah. And, it does. It comes from a loving environment, doesn't it? But this is what Dr. Farley mentioned. She said, like, there are symptoms and signs, she was very subtle, that tell us as veterinarians that your dog is stressed because it's not getting its energy needs met.
What would that be?
We'll have to ask Dr. Farley.
Oh,
but she says that they
Farley.
have separation anxiety and little things that you can tell they're anxious. And it's because they're not able to experience the natural world the way they're meant to.
I'm just thinking back to my old cavoodle. Miss that boy.
Oh, they're so great, aren't they?
Yeah, dogs are so good. I think that's one of my favorite things about your adventure is that you're doing this with what they've termed man's best friend.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that caption, you were like, yeah, we couldn't do this without him sometimes.
Yeah, totally. I think for me, it's more about regulating me. He's fine. But it means that because I'm making decisions for him, I will ease off rather than push forward if ever that's necessary. I do all of the things. Wombat has shoes and we're in the snow now and he loves being in the snow. And if I put the shoes on, he will just rip them off and leave them in the snow somewhere because he really enjoys. He's not born in Australia. He was born at altitude in Chile where it's cold. His hair is not really like that dry, coarse hair that you see here in blue heelers. It's more like a husky type of hair, so he's very warm. Right. When we've gone to altitude, he hasn't experienced altitude sickness, probably because I'm traveling so slowly because I am. He will chase llamas over the summits of 5,000 meter peaks, and I'm there being like, I just leave him behind because I know I'm like, I can't get you. You're going to have to come back. And he does. Always. He comes back very happy and pleased with himself that he's been able to do that. He's really, honestly, he has a great life. But also, I used to raise puppies with the guide dogs. I'm very experienced in training dogs with positive reinforcement. And now also I have other aids for more serious moments. Like Wombat understands that if I say freeze or watch out, that there is some sort of a serious risk. So if there's a snake, there's been a snake jump out of a jump, suddenly slither.
Leap? What do? They leap. They do leap. They have this.
There are flying snakes that jump out of trees in Panama. That blew my mind when I learnt that, and I was super paranoid. But anyway, there was there was a gap between the two of us. A snake came bolting out from underneath a bush, and he was on the other side of the snake. So I said to him, freeze, and he froze. And then I was like, back, and he slowly walked back. So, and we were moving away from each other, which is that's very counterintuitive for him to get further away from me. But we have such a tight relationship. We practice all of these drills all of the time.
Wow, yeah.
So that when there's a moose, he knows I'm standing still, I'm not making a noise, I'm not moving until Lucy's here.
Adds a whole other element to this adventure.
Yeah.
Training a dog to be an adventurer.
Yeah. There's so much to it. They need to be predator aware. They need to.
But the predators change. To your point, they change
totally
through the landscapes.
Yeah.
Of
if he's going to run
countries.
across a bridge or across, sometimes I use trees to get across rivers. He knows that he has to wait for me to get across before he comes across. Or if I call him, which I just put my arms out in an embrace and tell him on me, he will run up and climb up me while I have my pack on so that I can carry him across something that's just too delicate for him. I mean, he's way more rigorous than the way that I'm presenting him, but there are times when I've been more comfortable with carrying him over things, especially if his paws are going to fall through. There are some bridges where I've had to carry him because he literally can't walk on them.
Did you say that he was the world's greatest attention
Attention stealer.
attention stealer?
So last night we were all having a joke about how I've won the Adventure of the Year, and in a world first, Wombat was named Canine of the Year.
Yeah.
And so because
Canine
and then
of
we
the
were
Year.
talking about the media coverage and how some media members have gotten very fixated on Wombat, and they don't understand that you can't just fly a dog from the United States to Australia with no notice. That's a 7-month process. And so then they're like, oh, very hesitant about doing media because they're just so disappointed that they don't get to meet Wombat. And so last night when we were doing the announcement of Adventure of the Year and Canine of the Year, I then stood up and was like, Attention Stealer of the Year. And everyone in the room knew what I was talking about because we have big chats and catch-ups before the show. And it was a really great moment. But of course we do really adore Wombat. He's an important part.
Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah, it's such a great part of your adventure. I mean, you and Wombat are a team. You're a team.
Mm.
Yeah. What a great team.
Yeah, but I feel like anyone that has a good relationship with their dog can relate to that. You know, you can, when you know that you can look at your dog and your dog will sit because it knows what you want. That's such a great achievement and a great feeling.
Yeah, that's another, like I said before, it's a beautiful element of your adventure. That's so true, and talks about talks about animals, brings awareness.
And it has opened the conversation with many
Speaking of
people.
dogs.
I know, I saw it. I was like, you want to come over here? Gone.
It happened. You know, it happens. Last time we were talking about a dog on the podcast, I think that same dog walked past.
No,
Yeah.
like on cue, cue the
Yeah,
dog,
they-
cue the dog.
they-
I nearly reached out to it too. I thought it would be fine, but then I was like, no, I've got like sticky stuff on my fingers and probably I'd get licked and gooeyed.
Yeah, most likely. What do I want to talk about? I actually wanted to talk about Australia, what it's like being back. When was the last time you were in Melbourne?
18 months ago. I did another film tour 18 months ago.
Okay, must have just missed you that time.
Yeah, I don't know.
Before, let's not even ask. You think you've been on here 3 times, which means you owe me one more recording just to make up for it.
With pleasure. I know. Isn't that crazy? Like, I really just feel like we've had so much contact time that we've definitely done an extra one. I don't understand how it hasn't happened.
Yeah, I love how this blossomed, and to go all the way back for our audience. It's a bit of a story. You know, it was pandemic. We were just kind of coming out of it towards the end of 2021. The Gutsy Girls film tour of 2021 had been delayed from July to November. So just setting the scene a little bit. And so we had tickets for July, but, you know, we had to sit on those tickets for a few months till they opened things back up again. Then my girlfriend and I at the time, who, you know, we'd had a very rocky up and down COVID experience, like a lot of relationships, you know.
Like everyone that discovered that they didn't like being married anymore during COVID.
Well,
you know, it was a really
You're just not supposed to be, you know, joined
locked
at the hip
in. Totally.
with someone. You know,
Totally.
Then
You
there's-
know what that did, that experience of being in lockdown did for me? It really changed my understanding of what it must be like to go to jail. You know how people are always like, oh, it's so easy. They have a television and all the food is blah, blah, blah. It's basically lockdown. Like, I mean, obviously it's lockdown. But it just made me feel like, whoa, how do they manage the mental health issues that would appear?
No, well, they don't, and well, we're still dealing with the repercussions of it. But you know, going back then, it was like, ooh, cinema. We can go to the movies again.
Brilliant. That was not planned, but brilliant timing.
Yeah, and so we went and we watched the Gutsy Girls film tour, and there was a film about this Aussie woman who's, you know, hiking through South America somewhere with a blue heeler. And, you know, I think it was about 14 months later. In that 14 months, a lot happened, including my breakup. And a colleague of mine says to me, oh, you're doing a podcast. You're looking for guests. You should approach Tangles and Tail. And I was like, who's that? I don't know if I've come across them before. I looked you up on Instagram. I was like, Aussie woman, blue heeler.
This is familiar.
Yeah. And so it was such a trip for us to do our first chat.
It's so
going,
good. And I
like-
think also one of my highlight reels back then was part of the film. So that may have like helped jog your memory,
Yeah.
maybe.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like a dream come true, I would say. It was like a dream come true.
Really?
Yeah.
It's so crazy to me because I do have a lot of people who've been following since like, I said to someone last night, are you a 17er? As in, like, have you been following since 2017? And some of them have. Some people come up to me and they can tell me exactly when and where I was when they started
Super
following.
fans.
They're so, like, I have to put them at ease because there's some people are very nervous when they come to meet me. But I think the biggest jump is that they know a lot about me, but they know I don't know who they are. But the advantage is that we started talking about prosopagnosia when we started today. That's the advantage, is that I'm always on. Like, I'm constantly looking at people to be like, do they show signs of recognizing me? Do I need to work out
I need
who
the
they
bob.
are and
This is
how
where
I
I
know
cue the
them?
bob.
And I think that's really geared me. So now when I'm on tour and someone's like, oh, I just go straight in for a hug, and then I'm like, do I know them or are they a fan?
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Yeah. Well, I guess it's weird for me to say this is like a dream come true, but, you know, when I had the idea to do this podcast, I always wanted to have people on that, you know, I'd seen somewhere and I admired in some way. And it's such a trip to have you here, like in my city.
And I'm a project person. So when you first reached out to me, I was just like, I love when people are chasing something that's really out there, especially because I can really relate to, I'm sure you would have had people who are like, everyone's doing a podcast. Why would you do that for? That's going to go like, how are you going to have the time? Who are you going to interview? La, 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 la. And that's a big part of why I'm like, here is someone I know. I've mentioned this, and I'm constantly trying to help other people because I know that the ramp is steep. I know that you need a break to give you like credibility. For me, that moment was when I won the North Face Adventure Grant before I left for the adventure in the very beginning, because it just made it a bit more serious. And it gave people something to hold on to when they saw that the North Face was behind me.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love that about you. You're such a giving person as well. I think there's so much about this adventure when people ask you antagonizing questions like, oh, you know, do you really think you're the first person to be doing this because of blah, 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 blah.
And that's my first reaction, actually. Usually I roll my eyes and then I'm like, well, hold up.
Do you know how much I give? You know, I'd be thinking that.
No, I don't. I'm more like, I don't know everyone. I don't know what it takes to be a doctor. I don't know what it takes to be a journalist. I have a good idea because I used to work with journalists, but I really appreciate how deep in it they are. You know, like I understand the busyness and that everyone, when they're starting out, they see the end product like you did. You know, you hear podcasts and you think, God, I'd love to be the person that made that because that was beautiful. But then you learn that it's a craft that you've got to learn. And not only that, but then you have to learn how to be a businessman. And above that, you need to know how to market. And then above that, you need to learn how to edit and do all of the production. It's not just an interview. Need I say that just because we can talk and we know how to ask people questions doesn't mean that we're talented at interviewing and drawing out a conversation that's interesting to other people and not just ourselves. And I know that that whole bubble is happening for somebody else. And if I can just insert something that makes it easier or encouraging to grow the bubble bigger or, participate in some way, I love that. And that's something I've learned on this journey too. People love being involved in other people's projects. So the more you talk about it, but are careful to mention it to the lovers and not the haters, because at its infancy, that's when you're most vulnerable to giving up.
True. You're like an egg.
You really
crack.
are. You've got to grow into like a bowling ball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great analogy. That's so true.
Yeah, it's really something.
Yeah, I think I'm stubborn. That's what it is.
Yeah, same.
What do you think of this now? This is a totally different experience to our first one.
Isn't it cool? Like I love all the people that are walking past and they're doing these ones like.
Have you been to a zoo? You would have been to a zoo.
I used to
surely.
work at a zoo.
You're kidding.
No, that's where I learnt that Ligons. Have you seen, what was that film where there was a Ligon? Pedro.
No idea.
Okay, well that's where I learnt Ligons are true because we had a liger is true because we had a tigon. So it's when you have two species and
A lion and a tiger.
yeah. And a liger is where the lion is the father and a tigon is where the tiger is the father. That's how they name them. So we had one at that zoo and there used to be a lot of people coming in to check that out because that was such a rare, it's not legal to cross interspecies anymore and have those animals, those freak animals in like circuses.
People were doing that?
That's where Asta, this liger, came from. No, he was a Tigon. Aha.
If you thought you were on some kind of adventure podcast, everyone, welcome back here on the Louis Diaz podcast where we discuss freak animals.
And the most random topics that you were not expecting.
You know, I've got to say, you've been really great because you've been talking, you've been telling us things that are important to you. I just feel like I haven't quite woken up yet. I had a coffee this morning. I'm on 5 hours sleep. How much sleep did you get? I'm pretty sure you went to bed late last night too.
Yeah, I went to bed very late. I think it was about 1 a.m. And that morning I'd gotten up at 3 a.m. So it was a long day.
Which is wild.
But also, like, I'm not home very often and this is a great opportunity for me. So I really need to maximize my time where I can. I'm really looking forward to if anyone knows of a free personal assistant that is AI run, that'd be amazing. But until then, I've just got to make sure that I don't go to bed and not set an alarm and then wake up with like a wild panic thinking, oh my God, I've forgotten Louis and he's in the cold waiting for me to turn up and I'm not there.
I was a little worried that you might forget, but I didn't want to text you before, as we said earlier.
I know. I think that you should do a computer generated one so that it looks like it's just an auto and not like I'm trying to micromanage you.
Yeah.
Although I do need it
true.
right now. I need someone next to me.
Yeah, that's a good point. But then here you were in the bunker already.
Hiding. Rah.
You did. You right at me. You ligered right at me. Your inner liger came out. Or was it the Tigon? I'm not sure.
Like, I wish I'd heard I wish I'd seen you without you seeing me because I totally would have jumped out at you.
I'm so glad you didn't. I would have absolutely packed my Dax if you did that because this laneway can get a bit sketchy. We'll have to cut that out. Thanks, man.
Proudly supplying Australia's best chefs in the restaurants plus home.
What are you doing for lunch?
I haven't gotten that far.
Yeah, I think I wanted to touch on the what's it like being back thing just because, you were talking about what do you call it again? That breakfast, that fancy breakfast.
Oh, penultimate
breakfast.
So good.
And at some point, you're going to have your penultimate breakfast here in Australia.
Oh, you did not just do that.
Did I do that?
Oh.
Why?
I don't know. Why did you do that?
I didn't know why it would be such a bad thing.
Can I just
figured
tell
you would have already thought of this.
There's a moment like this in the film, and when you see it tonight, you're going to just
Am I
be
going to cry?
like...
Are you going to make me cry?
You may. And it's not me, it's Cam, the producer. He's a genius. He lives in I was about to say Mexico. No. So the person that did the camera work lives in Mexico, but Cam lives here in Melbourne. And he did
Who's
a spectacular
Cam who?
job. Cam's sweet. He has a film production company called No Studio.
Oh,
He's
cool.
doing... So... I reached out to Bo Miles. He's like a big YouTuber in Australia. He loves going in and talking about dirty rivers. That was one of his biggest YouTube videos.
Right.
And he's also like in my ilk. He's a bit dank. I don't do this, but he will eat half apples that have been dropped on the ground. He's quiet and he's very great performer. Like when he gets onto a monologue, it's like so mesmerizing because he'll rant about something that really like frustrates him. Anyway, I got on to Mitch, his producer. We had an email conversation ages ago, and then I was like, hey, Mitch, look, I've got a tiny grant. I know that this is offensive, but can you help me make a film for like no money? Basically won't even cover your costs. And he was like, I don't have time, but I have a friend who's a total sucker. I didn't say that, but Cam foolishly took me on. And we have this running joke that we know, like our first milestone is the moment that our channel catches up to Bo's channel.
Nice.
So we're in a race and they are so far ahead of us, but we're really hoping that we can
Get there. It's a good goal.
Yeah.
You'll get there. You've got the personality for it.
And it's different. It's not like we're competing.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
not a competition. I think comparison is the thief of joy.
I agree with you completely.
Yeah.
I feel like you've stolen that from my vernacular.
Yeah.
But
100%.
competition is like,
It's healthy.
it is, look, it's healthy, but I feel like you will achieve a lot more in collaboration. And so that is what I was doing. I sought out Mitch, who really helped me out. I've been connected with this photographer, Crystal Wright, who I totally idolize. and we all have connected each other together. So it's just like this wonderful, wonderful thing. And now Crystal, she's never actually done any work with me. I've never paid her for anything, but she's activated everything for me. And now I've been in a position where I can hire her. She's coming to the Hobart show. She's coming to the Sydney show. And it's just like we're going to have this like mutual idolization moment where we're like, it's you. No, it's you. Like, tears and like snotty laughter, all that shit.
That's awesome. Yeah, I guess that's what I was trying to I guess that's what I was trying to get to when I was talking about the experience here. Those moments where you get to spook people in laneways and you get to do snotty laughs with people that you've been wanting to catch up with for a long time. But knowing that you've got to go back to complete this thing. And yeah, I'm sorry if that was triggering in some way.
We're going back to it. I thought I threw in a red herring, but you're very good at interviewing.
I don't want to.
Look, to be honest,
I don't want to glaze past it because I know it must be. I know it must because you're good.
You're not going to believe me, but it's not on my radar at all. I have so much to do before I leave that I am literally just putting one fire out after the other. If I could push that flight back, I would. And there is every chance that I might miss that flight because I just have...
You're kidding.
I am drowning in jobs. Like, I'm about to go back to minus 20 degrees. I haven't even got my Nordic ski equipment yet. I don't even know what I'm going to get. I don't even know how to ski.
Don't you even have...
I can ski, but I've never Nordic skied.
Surely there's someone that's reached out to you and gone.
No, because I don't have time to like put myself out there.
You got a cross-country ski?
So Nordic skiing is like different. It's where there's fish scales on the bottom of skis. See, I learnt this in Lander a few months ago. Otherwise, I was going to use snowshoes, but then I kept like falling through the snow and like getting stuck. Yeah, so instead of doing that, you basically have a snowshoe that looks like a ski. That's the best way to explain it because there's fish scales underneath. You will not slip if you're going downhill. You still have to walk, but you're basically wearing really, really long sticks so that you don't fall into the snow. Yeah. And then I'll have to eventually get a sled because when Wombat can't walk, 'cause I'm not going to be putting him on skis, he will need to be towed. Or if it gets to be too much, some people that have been following forever have reached out to me the other day and they're like, hey, we've got family here, 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 and here. So if Wombat needs to be like moved into like chill mode, we'll be able to foster him for you while you finish your job. Like this is really a community effort that I'm on. Yeah, I'm doing all the hard work, but then I just trust that when I hit a roadblock, one, I have the skills to solve it. I have the network that can help me get there. And that everything in the end works itself out. As my like adoptive dad loves to say, I'm exactly where I need to be.
I love that. It's another good saying. You stole that from me.
Probably. Actually, I stole it from Howie. He stole it from you.
Yeah, I think you're exactly where you need to be. That's a great attitude towards it. How far ahead do we look when we're planning these things in life? And like I like to use the podcast as an analogy because I have nothing else going on in my life, and so the podcast is a great sort of analogy for that because it's like if I knew that I'd be putting I'm going to say 20 to 25 hours of work into every episode.
Would you still do it?
Nah. Not if someone told me at the beginning.
I think that's like my walk. I don't think I would have taken the first steps if I knew how it was going to be at times.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah. Or if how hard, like the burdens that I had to go through before I was efficient. If I'd done the PCT before, I'd have been like, no.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Because I feel like we're obviously talking about this in hindsight with the benefit of hindsight going, well, there's no way in hell I would have signed up for this.
If I'd had a taste of it first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then, as you and I both know, you miss out on the beautiful moments.
Oh, and also from our seats where we're sitting now, we wouldn't give it up. Would we?
No. I mean, is it 2/3? Do you reckon you're about 2/3 of the way through?
Bang on. I crossed...
Because I was looking at the map from Ushuaia to Wyoming and to the top of Alaska, and I was like...
The problem with rectangular maps is that the world is not flat. So when you flatten the world out, the tops get stretched. I have to not look at that map because the top is really stretched. It looks way further than I need to go. So the walk is 30,000 kilometers. Probably by the time I get to UNCUT, it'll be less than 30,000 kilometers. When I got to Lander, which is in Wyoming, so I've passed that point, I crossed the 20,000 kilometer mark.
So you're just fresh, right on 2/3.
Yeah,
Okay.
right there.
Yeah. I mean, you're 2/3 of the way in. Like,
Isn't that insane?
it's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, there's no way you would give this up from here.
No, like at the same time, I'm no longer doing it to be the first woman either. Like that's just like a thing that happens because I'm so focused on being able to have this production company, making these films, that it's just like all I'm really doing right now is like the reconnaissance mission. I'm going out, finding communities and getting invites so that I can do my job later.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I'm glad, you know what? I'm glad that it's not about the record.
Yeah.
Because you see people and, doing things a lot that's about the record.
And I think it also serves to remember there are people who experience post-expedition depression. And I feel like a big part of that is you've just achieved something huge that you have been consuming for a very long time and been hyperfixated on.
Yeah.
You get 2 seconds of fame and then the world forgets you.
Yeah.
So to hedge all of your bets and put all of your happiness balls in that basket, it's really leaving yourself in a very vulnerable position. Whereas for me, I think it helps that I actually, I'm so unco at group sports and just generally I've been the unco kid my whole life, that I started this journey for a bit of a laugh and for the lols and for great story writing. I actually never thought I would get to Alaska. And then one day people I wanted to quit. And my friend's mum put $600 in my account and said, look, I want you to buy a new pair of shoes. It seems like they're done. And I was like, oh my God, I can't quit now. I've got to at least get to the next town before I quit. And things just kept happening every single town that made me feel emotionally blackmailed into continuing.
You're kidding. That's so raw to hear that. Because one might look at you and then sort of think to themselves, oh no, the goal's always been to finish. There would have been hairy moments, but the goal's always been to finish. And at no point throughout the experience would you have ever gotten to the point where you would, seriously consider quitting.
Yeah, I mean, no, I actually just really never thought it was going to be possible for me, but I wanted to get a little way and maybe it would be possible for someone else.
You're so smart. That's such a smart way to do things in life.
Yeah, probably. And really, I'm just a joy seeker. I just want to be having a healthy, happy life and doing the things that I love.
Yeah, I love that.
And so that is really why I'm focused on film and storytelling and meeting people and having those experiences, because that is really what lights my fire.
That's so cute. Sorry, I started giggling to myself just then because you're like, I'm a joy seeker. Oh, we've also got a samurai taking photos next to us, by the way. Or a guy dressed up in a kimono.
That's awesome.
Good.
I'm after life and he's after death.
He looks good. He looks good. But why I started laughing is because I was, flicking through the gram last night, and there you are, teaching the nutbush to 2 Mexican police officers.
I'm so glad you saw that. How awesome. They're not the only ones who I taught it to. And I nearly, except that we had van issues, got a whole school doing it. I just wish that would have been amazing. How fun are they? Firstly, there's a bigger dance culture in Latino countries, so it wasn't so hard to be like, hey, can we do a TikTok? But then when I said it to the police, I really didn't think that they'd be allowed to do something. So, we should go down the street and see if we can get some Aussie police to do the nutbush with us.
We should. We should get this whole group of tourists right here. We should line them up like a line dance.
I think that since they're travelling here,
like a flash mob.
The nutbush is dance is very Australian. If these people are not, yes, that's what I learnt. So if people are not, yeah, neither did I.
Tina Turner.
You're right. I just thought everyone knew the moves, but she never did the moves. It was just us.
You're kidding.
No, and so they probably wouldn't know how to do it. We'd have to teach them.
I've learnt so much on this recording.
And we probably, if you had a list of stuff you wanted to talk about, we probably touched on 2.
I reckon, look, my list wasn't that long.
Should we close down and do part 2 later?
We should. Where are we at? We're at 1 hour and 40 minutes, which is about the length of time that my podcasts are going now. I think our first one was about 1:20, 1:30.
Yeah, I had the record.
Yeah, you did.
I was really proud of it.
I'm sorry.
No,
I was
I warned you. I'm like an extrovert who sees nobody. I got talk credits.
Yeah, this is going to be so much better because I think I had challenges with your audio from that backpackers hostel that you were in at the time. It was just really tough. And part of the reason why I'm going back to doing this in person is just so that I don't have to deal with Riverside, internet laggy,
All the things.
audio, people with bad mics. Here
Yeah.
you are set up with my professional kit, and you're being filmed in 4K ultra high definition as well. So we're going to see all of the things.
All of it, all the face, all the eye rolls.
I did, yeah, no, you got rid of all the food from the side of your face, which is good. But this has been a lot of fun, it just is another pinch me moment in the podcast journey that I'm on, which is still really new, even though I've been doing this since 2019.
And you're in an evolving industry too, so it's like you think you know everything, and then the whole industry changes, and you've got to pivot.
Yeah, I think the big way I can see it changing is just with social media is really changing it. But you know what else? Actually, there's a lot of podcasts. We talked about this, and there's a lot of homogeny in the podcast space as well.
I understand what you're saying there, because it's the same in adventure. There are a lot of people out there who have decided to take a year out to go cycling, for example, or van lifing.
Yeah.
How do you, first of all, if you're thinking about van lifing and filming, just go van life, because it does consume your whole trip. And I think for a lot of people I've met who have tried to do that whole vlog thing, it's just ruined something that could have been awesome for them.
You could have written about it instead. You could have journaled.
Or just done it for yourself.
Yeah.
Just do it for yourself. I think we talked about that last time too, didn't we? Like, where people really feel like they have to attach themselves to a charity to validate the reason that they want to do something for themselves, when you should just be allowed to work hard and then do something for yourself. Like,
well, I think a lot of creators are trying to escape the paradigm of 9 to 5.
That too. And we are in an amazing time where we can write our own jobs, which is cool as well.
Yeah.
However, there is a lot of delusion about how easy that is and how much money people make. Like, for example, I don't know any adventurers that are making real money. I think that I spoke to Cam the other day, and he is now a full-time creator, and he's financially sustainable. He's doing an excellent job. So it's possible, but you're going to be one of few.
I'll get there eventually. Come on, YouTube.
You know that they say that if you love it doesn't matter what you do, but if you're the best at it, you'll do well.
Yeah. For me, this entire podcast experience has been about telling great stories. At one point, like you said, it evolved, and suddenly you realize that if you're going to try and take this on seriously, you've got to change your mindset from being a great storyteller to being a great host, for example. How do you give the internet what it wants?
Yeah, and how do you have a conversation and have the insight to think, okay, I'm interested in this, but does my audience want to hear it, or should I move into something else? Yeah,
I mean, it's a good question, and I'd say that I don't really have that problem because I'm not big enough yet to have that problem. But I think for the people, the beauty of it is that this is authentic. I'm doing it the way it feels right, without the fancy intros with food all over our faces.
Yeah, totally. Nice.
And the people that will follow along now, that they're following on for the right reasons.
Yeah, totally. And that is really good. If you're like doing the thing that you want to be doing, then it progresses that way. Whereas the reason Ben, who came to Mexico, he's Mexican, and he came and was able to do the filming for us. I thought that to hire someone in Mexico to film would be really cheap, but it really wasn't at all, because they have so much influence from the United States and they're able to charge those rates. So he charged like just enough. Like, he really did me a favor, because their whole film company was set up to do adventurous film, but they ended up going down the corporate road because that's what makes the money, and they haven't been able to do that. So in exchange for him doing it on the cheap, he got to see a part of Mexico he's never seen before, and he was really uplifted by it. He said that it paid him more
in experience
than it did in finance. So I feel like it's nice that I was able to give that to him, but that he was also open to enable me to make the film.
That's beautiful. There's so many beautiful personal connections that you make along the way.
Yeah.
This has been such a great thrill to see you here in the flesh, to have you in person. I wonder when we're going to speak again. That's probably the first thing. I mean, obviously tonight.
Can you imagine? You fly over to Geographic, -40, you can barely hold a microphone.
I don't fly to anywhere I can't pronounce.
I had to YouTube it to learn.
Say it again.
Utqiagvik.
Utqiagvik. UNCUT. Okay. Where is that? There's Ushuaia, and then there's
Geographic.
that's the other one.
Yeah. So it used to be, I used to call it Barrow, but they've actually renamed it to be the Indigenous name, which I'd really take my hat off to. If you look at it on a map for now, what Google has done is from a far distance, you'll see the word Barrow, and then as you zoom in, Barrow changes to Utqiagvik.
I guess one of the ways I really like to close podcasts out is to see if you have any last sort of words. But would you recommend someone do what you do, what you've been doing? Would you ever recommend for someone to do that?
No.
If someone said to you, if you know, obviously you're doing this massive film tour,
Yeah.
and where are you? I mean, this is going to be played in retrospect anyway, so we're not going to.
Yeah, I feel like it'd be a really long conversation because, I mean, the thing is, there's a lot going on, like, in my mind about the experience. So I think it's kind of like, I took a major leap of faith doing what I did, and I was a communication specialist, so I really felt like I'd maybe be able to travel and sustain myself by writing blogs. And then everything just became absorbed about just managing time and having time to walk and then do the minimum. So that's where I'm at now. And I, like, if someone said, I really want to hike and do what you do, usually I'm like, that is awesome. What do you need help with? Let me tell you, you know, the best parts that I've enjoyed. And then I find out that, like, I get a better idea that they just want to travel or whatever. And I think it just depends what you're after in life. I think the greatest gift that I've got personally from this walk is that I'm getting closer to doing the actual thing that I wanted to do. Whereas previously I was a science communicator, like a translator, and I was managing accounts for science, like one of the Australia science agencies, and it was fabulous. And I loved going back. I actually, during the pandemic, they created a role for me so I could replenish my funds. Like, it was a really awesome place to work. But I also want to be living this life, like being able to engage with little groups, like we were explaining before, having these human connections, like that is so special. And it's just something I never really had the bravery to acknowledge was what I was seeking all along.
I really love that point. The bravery to acknowledge what I was seeking all along. That's a brilliant quote.
Yeah, and it's something that my mum has always said that I just never really understood. She says, like, when it comes to raising us, she said, I hope that my daughters have the courage to be who they want to be. And I never understood what that meant until I was sitting here having made the journey.
I think that's the journey of life, is to understand what it is that we're wanting out of it, you know, and what we really want out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had similar reflections recently. It's like, oh, I don't put 20 to 25 hours into each episode because I love it. But I feel like part of it is it calls a side of me. It fulfills me in some way.
Yeah. And there's nothing more addicting. I don't know if that's a word, but I've heard people say it, so I'm taking it.
Yeah, it feels weird to say it. Addictive?
Doesn't it? Well, it's the action. So there's just nothing more, there's nothing that grabs you more. So there's nothing more addicting than that final product and publishing and having that nest there. And then every time you go back, you get a bigger dopamine hit because people are watching it. Like, you watch people, you know, you engage and you just grow so proud of this little drop of water that you created.
Yeah.
And so that's why we trudge through the trails. It's because we want the end, that we want that droplet.
Also, you know, for anyone listening to this and seeing you for the first time, where can we follow you?
I go by Tangles and Tail. So I'm the biggest on Instagram.
Where did Tangles come from? Oh.
It's meant to be an image of my hair and my dog. So it's so that when people think of me, they imagine the silhouette. Okay. I'll give you one of those decals when you come in tonight. So Tangles and Tail, I'm on Instagram. You can find me on YouTube under Lucy Barnard. That's where the film will be published publicly for anyone to watch for free after we've finished with the tour. But what's special about coming to the tour is that you get to give us feedback so that we can make small changes for the final piece.
Okay. You've got a lot of backseat drivers then.
Yeah. Well, it's really, I mean, part of it is that we need to deliver something that the audience wants, and we need to be telling the story in a way that gets understood the way that we want to. So if there are blind sides, and things that we've just left in because we love them, but no one cares, then we need to get rid of them. You know, they say that all the time in editing, especially in writing, you've got to cull your favourite children first.
Oh, I think that's probably part of the challenge for me is that I don't get that kind of feedback. I think it's good though.
Yeah,
that you're doing
you need
that.
an honest friend. Yeah, I am that for many girlfriends.
we were talking about this last week with James Liotta, who's a full-time performer and an entertainer. He was talking about ethnic parents, how ethnic parents are so honest. If you really suck at something, they'll tell you. And we were talking about the fact that, you know, that honesty saves you from making potentially mistakes that cost you years of your life.
Yep.
Everyone needs an honest friend, people.
Yeah.
Have I had something in my teeth this whole time?
No.
I'm so glad. I was testing your honest friendship right there.
I will tell you. Actually, yesterday I was with the photographer and I'm like, hey, mate, your pants have split. He needed to know.
I can't see your face, but your pants are split.
And he's like, oh, yeah, my other pair were worse, so I used these. And I'm like, okay, cool.
Oh,
Just so long as you
funny.
know. I'm like, I don't mind, but I just want to make sure that you're not told.
That's funny. Well, Lucy, it's been so good to have you again. Honestly, this is, like I said, it's like a dream come true to see someone off the screen in real life, in my environment. You know, thank you for coming here.
It's my pleasure. For me, it's crazy, but like crazy in the best possible way.
Yeah.
It's so good to see you in the flesh.
Ah, awesome. Love you so much. Woo! Oh, what?